hearings on automated teller machines pursuant to Standing Order 1082, briefing on ATM fees and electronic payments. Thank you to the members of our second panel for being here today. As you know from viewing the previous panel, you'll have a maximum of 5 minutes to make your presentations, and I will give you an indication if you'd like to make eye contact that you have a minute remaining so as not to cut you off without warning. We will then go to questions from committee members at that point in time. So thank you for submitting your materials earlier. We appreciate that very much, and we'll look forward to your comments and answers to questions from the committee members this afternoon. We'll begin with Use My Bank, Joseph Ayuso. Yuso? Welcome. 5 minutes to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin, I'd like to introduce my partner, Brian Crozier, our VP of Business Development. First of all, I thank you for giving us the opportunity to appear before the House of Commons Standing Committee on Finance. We hope that we're able to provide you with the information about how our company, UseMyServices, provides billers in Canada with real-time confirmation of payments made through their bank systems. Today we come before you to tell you our story and how it relates to the bill payments infrastructure, which is governed by the H6 rules, the electronic payments infrastructure, which is governed by the new E2 rule, and finally the Bank Act and how it relates to fair and equal access as it pertains to competition and innovation being stifled by some of the major financial institutions and related associations here in Canada. Use My Bank is a company that's in the business of assisting billers and online merchants in providing instantaneous electronic payment confirmation. Through our joint venture with GPay, who provided us with biller access through all the FIs at the time, we began to market our services to the largest volume billers and online merchants in Canada, including WestJet, Rogers, TELUS, Fido, Sears, and many more. In August 2003, Use My Bank was invited to present a solution to the CPA committee that was looking at the new E2 rule called Draft Rule X at the time. Draft Rule X provided the guidelines as to how the new electronic payment systems were put in place by the members of the CPA, at the time devoid of technology solutions. In December 2003, CIBC and TD, along with the Alberta Treasury Board, closed GPay's biller account. There's no real reason given, short of the fact that they did not like the way GPay was doing business with Use My Bank. We were being shut out of a market by the FIs who were poised to compete with us. After further probing, it was discovered that they did not like the fact that in order for Use My Bank to facilitate the payment, we would act on behalf of the buyer, in essence acting as their agent to effect the payment at their FI's website, and receive real-time confirmation that the transaction had been successfully completed. This is how we were able to get the real-time confirmation of the payments to billers. This forced us to use an inferior product called email money transfer instead of the bill payment service. This form of payment is inferior, as person sending the money could cancel a transaction once it had been sent from their FI. In addition, it now cost the buyer an additional $1.50, which went to their FI. By the way, originally email money transfer was the real-time account-to-account transfer services, as we were able to deposit money within minutes to the GPay account. In essence, it originally was the real-time system this committee had been looking for. The unfortunate part is there's so many restrictions on this service that it is not a viable substitute at this time for most businesses. In 2005, Scotiabank launched Interact Online. They sent a letter advising GPay that they would close GPay's biller accounts access in 30 days. The reason given was they could do so without any reason on 30 days' notice. GPay sued in Alberta and was able to get an injunction preventing them until September 2005. Then BNS closed GPay's account. The net effect was like the waterworks shutting off water to a restaurant and peddling bottled waters to his patrons. This forced GPay to launch the first private action under Section 75 of the Competition Act. In 2006, the Competition Tribunal dismissed GPay's application. The decision is now under Federal Court of Appeal. In addition, the CPA, to our dismay, introduced Rule E2, which was a weapon for the banks to use against billers who decided to even think about using Use My Bank services. It would seem like they would like to have a monopoly on electronic payments. This brings us to the present. The remaining banks have been friendly to date and now undertake reviews of GPay's biller accounts and bank account access. It is not clear if GPay will continue past the next 60 to 90 days, again leaving GPay no recourse, and this committee as one of its final hopes. This hope is extended to the many billers and online merchants waiting on bated breath to see if we win the ultimate right to provide an innovative technology which could streamline their businesses by providing real-time confirmation rather than waiting for some fax or EDI report from the bank. In conclusion, we'd like to make 3 recommendations to this committee. The first is a review of the H6 rules that govern the bill payment system and treat this system as an infrastructure operated by the banks, but which is accessible by non-FIs such as Use My Bank. This would be similar to how the telephone lines were opened up to outsiders and has promoted a healthy competition among companies that have benefited Canadian consumers and businesses. The second is that the E2 rules that govern the electronic payment systems here in Canada should be reviewed, as they force all electronic payments to be initiated by the bank's website, and no third party is allowed to be involved in the payment process. Although this rule looks simple, it has the net effect of stifling competition and innovation, as the FIs are the only ones who effectively rule the system, therefore creating a monopoly sanctioned by the CPA E2 rule. This is totally contrary to what has been legislated to do as part of the 1996 consent order handed down on ATMs. Lastly, the Bank Act itself. A revision was done that was basically said that the banks are not allowed to close accounts or deny access to consumers who meet a certain criteria. This was not extended to corporations, or if it was not being interpreted that way. In essence, the banks are allowed to pick and choose which services the companies are allowed to have bank account access and use their services. As such, there's no protection for corporations in good standing who wish to do banking at the same bank as their consumers. This would allow them to take advantage of cost savings, much like the same way people would go to their local ATMs and pay no fees. Banks in Canada are like the waterworks. They are an infrastructure to which each of us must be granted access. We would like to thank you for your time and will remain at your disposal to answer questions.
Evan Soike.
That's it.
Thank you, sir, who is here on behalf of the Association of Community Organizations for Reform Now. 5 minutes to you, sir.
All right. Now, I didn't bring a speech with me, so we'll see how I do. I guess I'll first mention that I'm here representing about 7,500 Canadian members of ACORN, and as well as a number of people who are non-members who are part of the working and quite often struggling families and individuals. I have a number of concerns which I've been asked to address. The first one is that of NSF charges and the fact that they've been increased to substantially high rates, and the people I represent don't feel that the NSF charges right now are reflecting the administration costs, and we feel that the NSF charges generally fall on the working individuals and those who are struggling to make the bills, and as a result of that, the banks are directly profiting off of struggling families and individuals. And you're going to find that as I go through this, there's several aspects in which we feel that this is happening, and it's quite difficult for the people I represent to deal with. Also, I'd like to quickly comment on just standard bank fees. From my understanding, quite often if people have $1,000 in a bank or more, they will be voided from a number of bank fees that most people will incur. And the question is, why is it that when people have $1,000 in a bank, they don't have to pay these bills, but when people are struggling to pay the rent, they can't make that $1,000 income? Why are they the ones who are being hit with this bank fee? I think, of course, as it was a hot topic earlier, I have a few comments on ATMs. Due to the presence of white label ATMs, we're finding that there's fewer and fewer bank-owned ATMs, and quite often we see that in low-income neighborhoods. So all of a sudden we're finding that with a large population, they're finding it very difficult to reach those ATMs. Additionally, banks at this point have been denying some of my neighbors and other people that I know access to bank services in total, which ends up sending them, which goes into another aspect, which is looking at a privatized industry. I've got these people who can't go to a bank to cash their paycheck. They find themselves going to Money Mart or payday lenders, and their banks are investing in these and turning customers away from their own banks and saying, well, you're going to have to go to this company who's now charging rates outside of anything that banks are being legislated. Also, there's not much need to mention the fact that banks are not charging ATM fees in the U.S. and Europe. However, it is worth mentioning that from what I've been told, TD right now is not charging ATM fees to their U.S. customers. Why are they unwilling to charge that to? Why are they unwilling to provide that same service to their Canadian customer base? I think that comes into the future of the finance industry. I think we see that banks are investing in private organizations, which is allowing them to skirt around the legislation which is currently governing them. So we would like to see some kind of legislation